This isn't just a story about a rude billionaire. It's about a single, clumsy sentence spoken in broken Italian. A sentence meant to humiliate, but that instead unlocked a secret a powerful man had buried for decades. Imagine a high-end Italian restaurant filled with the scent of garlic and old wine. Across a starched white tablecloth, a man named Adrian, dripping with wealth, leans in to insult an elderly waiter. And at that same table, a quiet stranger watches it all unfold, not with shock, but with a faint, knowing smile. Over the next few minutes, we will uncover the secret Adrian was so desperate to hide, who the mysterious stranger at the table really was, and the hidden connection between all three men, a bond forged in a place built on survival and desperation. If you believe that a person's true character is revealed not by their wealth, but by how they treat those they think don't matter, then stay with me. The final reveal is more satisfying than you can imagine. To Adrian, the world was a chessboard he owned, and people were either assets or obstacles. This old waiter was an obstacle to his perfect evening. He believed his fortune bought him immunity from consequences, but he was fatally mistaken. He sat in a fortress of his own ego, completely blind to the trap closing in around him. He didn't know three fundamental secrets that were about to shatter his world right there between the appetizer. First, the frail waiter he was berating wasn't just an employee. He was the silent owner of the entire restaurant empire, a man who built his fortune from nothing. Second, the quiet observer at his table, the one he dismissed as a junior associate, was in fact his own son. A son he hadn't seen in decades, now sitting there and judging him in complete silence. And finally, the most devastating truth of all. The secret that had haunted him for 30 years, a story of betrayal and a terrible choice, wasn't buried in the past. It was the very reason this dinner had been arranged. This is a story about a spectacular reversal of fortune. So it makes me wonder, what's the biggest plot twist you've ever witnessed in real life? Let me know in the comments below. To understand the explosion, we must first see the bomb. Hours earlier, Adrian was in his natural habitat, a sterile office on the top floor of a glass fortress. He was hunched over his phone, whispering. He was using a language app, its tinny voice correcting his pronunciation. He wasn't trying to learn a language, he was trying to buy a costume, rehearsing the sound of old money. He waved away an assistant without a glance, treating those beneath him like furniture. His arrogance was a shield, forged to hide a deep, gnawing insecurity. But there was a deeper irony at play. Every mispronounced word wasn't just a flaw in his performance. It was a faint echo of a life he had fought to bury, a ghost he thought no one could ever unearth. At the restaurant, Adrian didn't settle into his chair, he occupied it, his eyes scanning every detail with a hunter's instinct for flaws. He was looking for a stage, and he was about to find it. Marco, the elderly waiter, approached with a silver pitcher of water. His movements were slow, deliberate. As he leaned in to pour, his hand, betraying a hint of age, trembled for a fraction of a second. A single, solitary drop of water landed on the crisp, white tablecloth. For anyone else, it would have been invisible. For Adrian, it was a declaration of war. This was the excuse he had been waiting for. A smug, theatrical sigh escaped his lips. He leaned back, ensuring everyone nearby could hear him. Then the clumsy, brutal Italian he had rehearsed began to pour out. "Guarda questo disastro," he announced, his accent a butcher's work. "Look at this disaster." He pointed a manicked finger at the droplet.
Un vecchio incompetente. Non puoi nemmeno servire l'acqua. An incompetent old man. You can't even serve water? The humiliation was the point. Adrian, basking in the spotlight of his own cruelty, had no idea that he hadn't just insulted a waiter. He had just handed the key to his darkest secret to the two people in the world who could destroy him with it. First, he attacked the waiter's competence, but Marco didn't flinch or apologize. He simply met Adrian's gaze with a calm that was more unnerving than any argument. This quiet dignity infuriated Adrian. He had expected fear. Instead, he was met with a mirror reflecting his own ugliness. Mistaking silence for weakness, Adrian escalated his attack, gesturing around the opulent room. People like you, gente come te, you can never truly appreciate a place like this. You serve, but you will never belong. His grammar began to fall apart, a clumsy mix of words he clearly didn't understand. If that blatant cruelty bothers you as much as it does me, hold on to that feeling. The most twisted part of this whole affair is still to come. Marco's unbreakable composure finally shattered Adrian's control. This was a battle of wills, and Adrian was losing. He snapped his fingers, a crude sound that cut through the restaurant's ambiance. "Manager!" he boomed. "Get the manager over here right now!" When the manager approached, Adrian pointed a triumphant finger at Marco. "I want him fired, now, in front of me." This was his final move to prove his dominance, without realizing that with every word, he was just tightening the noose around his own neck. Adrian savored what he believed was his victory, a king upon his throne, waiting for the final, satisfying verdict of Marco's dismissal. But it's precisely at the peak of arrogance that reality chooses to strike. The quiet stranger at the table, Mr. Rossi, slowly leaned forward. He didn't look at Adrian. His eyes were fixed only on the old waiter. And when he spoke, his voice was not loud, but it cut through the room's tension like a surgeon's scalpel. He spoke in a flawless regional Italian. With a tone of genuine concern, he asked a simple, devastating question. "Padre, va tutto bene?" Father, is everything all right? The word padre landed like a grenade in the center of the table. Adrian's triumphant smirk dissolved into a mask of slack-jawed confusion. The power he had so carefully constructed shattered. The man he had just tried to have fired for a drop of water was the father of the very person he was trying to impress. In that single instant, the hunter became the prey. The air in the room solidified. Every sound vanished, replaced by the frantic, hammering pulse inside Adrian's own head. He stared, frozen, as the blood drained from his face. Then Mr. Rossi switched to perfect, clear English, his voice carrying the weight of a judge delivering a verdict. "My father, Marco," he began, his gaze finally shifting to a stunned Adrian, "likes to work a shift here every week." A devastating pause hung in the air. "He says it helps him remember where he came from. It's a good practice for the man who founded and still owns every single one of these restaurants." And just like that, the entire power dynamic of the room inverted. This wasn't just mistaken identity. This was the unmasking of a fraud. Adrian's power was borrowed, fragile. Marco's was earned, solid. The king was now a naked emperor, shivering under the cold gaze of his audience. But the execution was not over. Rossi leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper that was louder than a shout. He switched back to slow, methodical Italian. "When you called my father un vecchio incompetente, you used the wrong article," he said. "Your phrasing, un disastro, it's what a tourist would say. Clumsy, obvious." This wasn't just a correction.
It was a complete dismantling of Adrian's identity, but it was merely the prelude to the final blow. "You see," Rossi continued, returning to English for the final verdict, "arrogance doesn't hide a man's flaws, it illuminates them. It makes men like you careless. It makes you think no one would ever run a background check before a billion-dollar merger. A cold smile touched Rossi's lips. Your name isn't Adrian Ricci. There is no old Italian money. There's just Arthur Smith from a small town in Ohio. The mask turned to dust. The billionaire was gone. All that was left was a small, frightened man, buried under the ruins of a life he had stolen. The 30-year secret wasn't just a name, it was the engine behind his cruelty. He had to tear down a real man just to prove his own mask was real. Then, slowly, one of the business partners placed his napkin on the table. He pushed his chair back, the sound of its legs scraping the floor echoing like a gunshot. One by one, the others followed. No angry words, just a quiet, unanimous verdict. They were walking away from a ghost, leaving Arthur Smith alone with the rubble of a life he never truly had. In the end, the story teaches us a timeless lesson. True class isn't purchased with money or faked with an accent. It is a currency of character, revealed in how we treat those we believe have nothing to offer us. Adrian built his empire on a fragile lie. Marco, on the other hand, wore no mask. His waiter's uniform wasn't a disguise hiding his power. It was a symbol of it, a reminder of a life built on humility. He knew exactly who he was. But this makes you wonder about the secrets people carry. Sometimes the quiet, overlooked person in the room isn't concealing a weakness. They're concealing a profound, unbelievable strength, a hidden genius the world simply isn't ready for. And that is precisely where our next story takes us, to the incredible tale of a humble janitor who secretly solved the world's most difficult math problems, right under the noses of the professors who saw him as invisible. To see how a forgotten man held the keys to the universe, click the video right here on your screen.